The crimson sunset painted the Wyoming sky as Olivia Haywood staggered through the back alley of the Last Chance Saloon. Her once pristine blue dress now torn and stained with dirt and blood. The year was 1876, and Opal, Wyoming was no place for a woman alone after dark, a lesson she was learning the hard way. Blood trickled from a cut above her eye, and she could taste copper on her split lip. The pain in her ribs made each breath an agony as she stumbled against the rough wooden wall of the building. The three men who had followed her out of the saloon had taken her money, her dignity, and nearly her life before losing interest and staggering away, laughing about how they'd taught the uppity schoolteacher a lesson. Olivia slid down the wall, no longer able to support her own weight. The world spun around her as darkness crept into the edges of her vision. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. Not in a filthy alley behind a saloon in a town she'd only arrived in 3 days ago. She wasn't sure if minutes or hours had passed when the sound of boot heels on hard-packed dirt roused her from semi-consciousness. Weakly, she tried to push herself further into the shadows. "My God," a deep voice breathed. Then came the sound of running footsteps. Through swollen eyes, Olivia made out the silhouette of a tall man kneeling beside her. His face was shadowed by the brim of a worn cowboy hat, but his voice was gentle as he carefully examined her injuries. "Miss, can you hear me?" His calloused fingertips lightly touched her cheek, turning her face toward him. "Please," she whispered, "don't hurt me. I'm not going to hurt you." The man's voice was soft but firm. "Who did this to you?" Olivia tried to answer, but pain overcame her, and she slumped forward against his chest. "Don't you worry now," he said, gathering her carefully into his arms. "You're coming home now." The last thing Olivia remembered before losing consciousness was the steady beat of his heart against her cheek, and the feeling of being lifted as if she weighed nothing at all. When Olivia awoke, sunlight was streaming through a window draped with simple cotton curtains. She lay in a clean bed, covered with a handmade quilt. Every inch of her body ached, and when she tried to sit up, pain shot through her ribs, forcing a gasp from her lips. "Easy now," came a woman's voice, and a weathered hand gently pushed her back against the pillows. "You've got 2 cracked ribs that need mending." Olivia blinked, trying to bring the woman's face into focus. She was older, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, but her eyes were kind. "Where am I?" Olivia asked, her voice raspy. "You're at the Northridge Ranch, about 5 miles outside of Opal." The woman placed a cool cloth on Olivia's forehead. "My name's Martha. I'm the housekeeper here." "How did I?" Olivia began, then memories of the attack flooded back. She shuddered, remembering the hard fists, the cruel laughter, the helplessness, and then the man who'd found her. "There was someone who helped me." Martha nodded. "That would be Mr. Northridge. He brought you here last night, half dead and bleeding. Nearly took the door off its hinges getting you inside. Mr. Northridge, Henry Northridge. This is his ranch." Martha poured water from a pitcher into a glass. "Here, you need to drink. Doctor says you're dehydrated." Olivia tried to take the glass, but her hands trembled too badly. Martha helped her sip the cool water. "The men who attacked you," Martha said, her voice hardening. "Did you recognize them?" Olivia closed her eyes. "No, they followed me out of the saloon. What were you doing in that place alone?" There was no judgment in Martha's tone, only concern. "I wasn't there by choice," Olivia said. "I'm the new schoolteacher. I arrived in Opal 3 days ago, and the room I was promised at the boarding house had been given to someone else. The proprietor of the Last Chance had a room to let upstairs." She swallowed hard. "I was desperate." Martha's expression softened. "Rest now. The doctor will be back this afternoon to check on you." As Martha left the room, Olivia sank back into the pillows, her mind racing despite her exhaustion. She had come to Opal with such hopes of a fresh start after the scandal back in Boston. Now here she was, beaten and broken in a stranger's home, once again at the mercy of others. She was drifting back to sleep when the door opened. A tall man entered, removing his hat as he approached the bed. In the clear light of day, Olivia could see him properly. He had dark hair that fell in waves to his collar, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of a summer storm. He was dressed simply in a chambray shirt, worn jeans and boots. "Miss Haywood." His voice was just as she remembered it, deep and steady. "I'm Henry Northridge." "You saved me," she whispered. He shook his head. "I just brought you someplace safe. Doc Jensen did the saving." "Thank you, Mr. Northridge." He pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down, his hat in his hands. "Sheriff Potter will want to talk to you when you're stronger." "Can you tell me what happened?" Olivia turned her face away, shame burning her cheeks. "I was foolish. I was staying at the last chance until I could find proper lodgings. 3 men followed me when I stepped out back for some air." Henry's knuckles whitened as he gripped his hat tighter. "Did you recognize any of them?" "No, but one had a scar across his cheek, and another wore a silver ring with a large red stone." She shuddered at the memory of that ring connecting with her face. Henry nodded grimly. "Sounds like the Reeves brothers and their cousin. They've been trouble since they rode into town last month." "Why did you help me?" Olivia asked, meeting his eyes directly for the first time. "You don't know me." Henry looked down at his hat, turning it slowly in his hands. "No decent man would leave a woman in that condition." "But to bring me to your home. I couldn't take you back to the saloon, and the doctor's office is no place for a lady to recover." He stood up. "You're welcome to stay until you're well enough to take up your teaching post." "I don't think I'll be teaching in Opal after all," Olivia said softly. "Not after what happened. The school board won't want someone with my reputation." Henry's jaw tightened. "The only reputation you should have is as a victim of a brutal attack. Those men are the ones who should be shamed, not you." He moved toward the door. "Rest now. We can talk more later." After he left, Olivia lay staring at the ceiling. Henry Northridge seemed to be a good man, the kind of man she had believed no longer existed. But she had learned the hard way that appearances could be deceiving, and kindness often came with a price. Over the next few days, Olivia's body began to heal. The bruises faded from angry purple to sickly yellow, and the pain in her ribs lessened enough that she could sit up without assistance. Dr. Jensen, a gruff older man with gentle hands, visited daily, pronouncing her recovery remarkable for a city woman. She saw little of Henry during this time. Martha explained that spring was a busy season on the ranch, with calving underway and fences to repair after the harsh Wyoming winter. But each evening he would come to her room briefly, asking after her health and if she needed anything. On the 5th day, Olivia insisted on getting out of bed. Martha helped her dress in a borrowed skirt and blouse, both too large for her slender frame. "Mr. Northridge's sister left some clothes here last time she visited," Martha explained, pinning the waist of the skirt. "She's a bit more substantial than you, but these will do until we can get your things from town." Olivia hesitated. "My things are still at the saloon." "I can't go back there." "Mr. Northridge sent one of the hands to fetch them 2 days ago," Martha said. "They're in the wardrobe, but I thought these might be more comfortable while you're healing." Leaning heavily on Martha's arm, Olivia made her way downstairs. The Northridge ranch house was larger than she had expected, a sprawling single-story building with a wide central hallway and rooms branching off it. The furnishings were simple but of good quality, and everywhere was spotlessly clean. Martha led her to a sunny sitting room and settled her in a comfortable chair by the window. From here, Olivia could see the ranch yard, where men moved purposefully between buildings, leading horses or carrying supplies. "This is a big operation," Olivia observed. Martha nodded proudly. "One of the most successful in the territory. Mr. Northridge's father started with just 50 head of cattle and built it into this." She gestured toward the expanse of buildings and corrals. "And Mr. Henry has doubled the size since he took over 5 years ago." "What happened to his father?" "Pneumonia took both Mr. and Mrs. Northridge Sr. within a month of each other. Mr. Henry was only 23, but he stepped right into his father's boots." Martha's voice held admiration. "He's a good man, Miss Haywood. One of the best." Before Olivia could reply, the front door opened and Henry himself walked in. He stopped short when he saw her. "Miss Haywood, you're up." He removed his hat, revealing hair damp with sweat. There was a smudge of dirt on his cheek and a tear in the shoulder of his shirt. "Dr. Jensen said I should start moving around," she explained. "I hope you don't mind me using your sitting room." "This house is at your disposal for as long as you need it," he said, then looked down at his dusty clothes. "Excuse my appearance. We've been branding calves all morning." "There's no need to apologize. It's your home." Olivia shifted in her chair, wincing slightly as her ribs protested. Henry's eyes narrowed with concern. "Are you in pain? Should I send for the doctor?" "No, I'm fine. Just a bit stiff from being in bed so long." He nodded, though he didn't look convinced. "I'm heading into town this afternoon. Sheriff Potter wants to talk about the men who attacked you." Olivia's stomach clenched with anxiety. Does he know where I'm staying?" "Yes, but I've made it clear that you're here as my guest, recovering from injuries." Henry's voice was firm. "No one in Opal who matters will think less of you for it. You don't understand. I came here to escape gossip, not to create more." Tears of frustration pricked at Olivia's eyes. "My position as schoolteacher is likely already lost." Henry crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, his eyes level with hers. "What happened in Boston, Miss Haywood?" Olivia looked away. "How did you know I'm from Boston? Your accent, and the label in your coat." She sighed. "I was engaged to be married to the son of one of Boston's most prominent families. A week before the wedding, I discovered he had inappropriate relationships with several young women. When I broke the engagement, his family spread rumors that I was the one who had been unfaithful." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "No school in Massachusetts would hire me after that." Henry's expression darkened. "So you came west for a fresh start, and managed to ruin my reputation here before I even began teaching." Olivia gave a bitter laugh that turned into a wince as her ribs protested. "You've ruined nothing," Henry said firmly. "Those men attacked you. You're the victim, not the villain." He stood up. "I'll speak with the school board myself." "Please don't," Olivia said quickly. "I couldn't bear more people knowing what happened." "They already know, Miss Haywood. News travels fast in a small town like Opal." His voice softened at her distressed expression. "But not in the way you fear. The story going around is that you were ambushed by 3 cowards who prey on women, and that you fought back bravely." "But I didn't." "The bruises on your knuckles say otherwise," Henry interrupted, gesturing to her hands where the skin was indeed scraped and bruised. "Doc Jensen says one of your attackers is sporting a broken nose, courtesy of your right fist." A flicker of pride warmed Olivia's chest. She had fought back, even if she didn't remember doing so in the chaos of the attack. Henry picked up his hat. "I should get cleaned up before I head to town. Is there anything you need while I'm there?" Olivia hesitated. "My funds are limited, but if you could inquire about any available rooms at the boarding house, you're welcome to stay here until you're fully recovered," Henry said quickly. "The ranch is a good place to heal." Something in his tone made Olivia look at him more closely. There was an earnestness in his expression that went beyond simple hospitality. "Thank you," she said softly, but I can't impose indefinitely. It's no imposition." He turned to go, then paused. "Miss Haywood, would you join me for supper tonight? Martha makes a fine roast on Saturdays." Surprised by the invitation, Olivia nodded. "I'd be honored, Mr. Northridge." After he left, Martha bustled in with a tray of tea and biscuits. "I heard the master invite you to supper," she said, her eyes twinkling. "That's a good sign." "A sign of what?" "That he likes having you here." Martha poured the tea. "It's been too quiet in this house since his sister married and moved to Denver last year." "Does he live here alone, apart from you and the ranch hands?" "He does." "Some say it's not right for a man of his standing to remain unmarried at 28, but Mr. Henry says he hasn't found the right woman." Martha gave Olivia a meaningful look. "Or hadn't until now." "Martha, please," Olivia protested, her cheeks warming. "Mr. Northridge is simply being kind to someone in need." "If you say so, dear." The older woman smiled knowingly. "Now drink your tea while I see about something suitable for you to wear tonight." Left alone, Olivia sipped her tea and gazed out at the ranch yard. A part of her knew she should be making plans to leave Opal as soon as she was able. There were other towns, other teaching positions. She could start fresh somewhere else. But another part, a part that grew stronger each day, she spent at the Northridge Ranch, whispered that perhaps her fresh start was right here, in the place she least expected to find it. That evening, dressed in her own blue silk gown that Martha had skillfully mended, Olivia made her way to the dining room. Henry was already there, standing by the fireplace. He had exchanged his work clothes for a clean shirt and vest, and his dark hair was neatly combed. He turned as she entered, and for a moment he simply stared at her. "Miss Haywood," he finally said, "you look remarkable." "Martha worked wonders with my dress," Olivia said, smoothing the fabric self-consciously, "and the bruises are fading." He pulled out a chair for her at the table, which was set with fine china and crystal. "I hope you don't mind dining formally. It's not often I have the opportunity for civilized company at supper." The meal that followed was the most pleasant Olivia had experienced since leaving Boston. Henry proved to be well-read and articulate, with opinions on everything from literature to politics. He listened attentively to her views, never dismissing them even when they differed from his own. "You surprise me, Mr. Northridge," Olivia said as they lingered over coffee and apple pie. "I wouldn't have expected a Wyoming rancher to be so familiar with Shakespeare." "My mother's doing," he replied with a smile. She was determined that her children wouldn't grow up to be uncultured heathens, even if we did live 50 miles from the nearest proper theater. His eyes took on a distant look. "She was a schoolteacher before she married my father." "Like me," Olivia said softly. "Like you." His gaze returned to her face. "I went into town today, as I mentioned. Sheriff Potter is still looking for the Reeves brothers. They seem to have left Opal, but he's put out word to neighboring towns." Olivia set down her coffee cup. "And the school board? They're holding your position. In fact, Mrs. Patterson from the board stopped me specially to ask after you. She says the children are eager to meet their new teacher." Henry leaned forward. "No one blames you for what happened, Miss Haywood. If anything, the town is angry on your behalf." Relief washed over Olivia, so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. "I never dared hope," she began, then broke off as emotion overwhelmed her. Henry reached across the table and took her hand. His touch was gentle, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "You're safe here, Miss Haywood, and when you're ready, there's a place for you in Opal." "Thank you," she whispered, not trusting herself to say more. Later that night, as Olivia prepared for bed, she found herself humming softly. For the first time since the attack, perhaps for the first time since leaving Boston, she felt a sense of peace. Whatever happened next, she wasn't alone anymore. The following weeks brought rapid improvements in Olivia's health. Dr. Jensen pronounced her ribs healed enough for normal activity, though he cautioned against horseback riding for at least another month. The visible reminders of the attack faded, and with them, much of Olivia's fear. Henry continued to be a considerate host, making time each evening to dine with her despite the demands of the ranch. Their conversations ranged widely, and Olivia found herself looking forward to these hours together more than she cared to admit. One evening in late April, they sat on the front porch after supper, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of gold and purple. "The school board sent a message today," Henry said, breaking a comfortable silence. "They're hoping you'll be well enough to start teaching next Monday." Olivia turned to look at him, surprised by the conflicting emotions his statement provoked. Joy at the prospect of finally beginning the work she had come to Wyoming to do, and an unexpected sadness at the thought of leaving the ranch. "That's wonderful news," she said, trying to keep her voice light. "I should move into town over the weekend then." "There's no rush," Henry said quickly. "The schoolhouse is only 3 miles from here. You could easily ride in each day." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting I continue to impose on your hospitality indefinitely, Mr. Northridge?" "I'm suggesting that this house feels more alive with you in it." His voice was low, his eyes intent on her face. "I'm suggesting that I've grown accustomed to your company, Miss Haywood." Her heart began to race. "Henry, I know it's too soon," he continued, as if afraid she would stop him. "We've known each other barely a month, but I feel—" "I've never felt this way about anyone before." Olivia looked down at her hands, twisted together in her lap. "I came to Wyoming to be independent, to stand on my own 2 feet after what happened in Boston." "I understand that," Henry said gently. "And I would never want to take that independence from you. But perhaps we could find a way forward together." She raised her eyes to his face. In the fading light, his expression was earnest, vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. "What are you asking me, Henry?" "I'm asking if you might consider staying, not as a guest, but as—" He took a deep breath. "I'm asking if you might give me the chance to court you properly, Olivia." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it on his lips sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the evening chill. "I'm not asking for promises," Henry continued when she remained silent. "Just the opportunity to show you that what I feel for you is real." Olivia thought of the life she had planned for herself in Opal, independent, respected, dedicated to her students. But in none of those plans had she accounted for meeting someone like Henry Northridge, a man whose quiet strength and kindness had begun to heal not just the physical wounds from her attack, but the deeper hurts she had carried from Boston. "Yes," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I would like that very much." The smile that broke across Henry's face was like the sun emerging from behind clouds. Slowly, as if giving her time to pull away, he reached for her hand. When she didn't resist, he raised it to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. They sat together as darkness fell, hands entwined, watching as stars appeared one by one in the vast Wyoming sky. The following Monday, Olivia stood before her class for the first time. 28 children of varying ages stared back at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright skepticism. "Good morning," she began, hiding her nervousness behind a smile. "I'm Miss Haywood, your new teacher." A small girl in the front row raised her hand immediately. "Are you the lady who punched Jed Reeves in the nose?" she asked without waiting to be called on. A ripple of whispers ran through the classroom. Olivia felt heat rising to her cheeks, but she kept her composure. "I believe that's a matter for the sheriff, not the schoolroom," she said firmly. "Now, Who can tell me what you were studying with your last teacher? By midday, Olivia had established her authority in the classroom and begun to learn her students' names and abilities. When the children were dismissed for lunch, she sat at her desk, allowing herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. A knock at the schoolhouse door interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see Henry standing in the doorway, hat in hand. "Mr. Northridge," she said, suddenly conscious of her disheveled appearance after a morning wrangling nearly 30 energetic children. "What brings you to town?" "I was delivering some papers to the land office and thought I might check how your first day is going." He stepped into the schoolroom, looking around with interest. "Quieter than I expected." Olivia laughed. "The children are having lunch outside. It's rather less peaceful when they are all here." "And how are you finding them?" "Bright, curious, and far more interested in whether I really broke Jed Reeves's nose than in their arithmetic." Henry grimaced. "I'm sorry about that. I should have warned you the story has become something of a local legend." "It's all right. I've made it clear that we'll be focusing on education, not gossip, in my classroom." She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Would you care to join me for lunch? Martha packed enough for two." They sat on the schoolhouse steps, sharing sandwiches and apple slices as Henry told her about his morning in town. It was so easy, so comfortable, that Olivia almost forgot they were in full view of anyone passing by. She was reminded when Mrs. Patterson, head of the school board, walked past and gave them a knowing smile. "Good day, Miss Haywood, Mr. Northridge. I see our new teacher is settling in nicely." After the woman had moved on, Olivia sighed. "And now we'll be the subject of fresh gossip. Does that bother you?" Henry asked, his expression concerned. Olivia considered the question seriously. "In Boston it would have," she said finally. "But here, I find I care less about what others think as long as it doesn't affect my position or my students." Henry smiled. "That's Wyoming for you. People are more concerned with what you do than who you're seen with. Still, we should be discreet. I am the town's teacher, after all." "Of course," Henry agreed, though the look in his eyes suggested he wasn't entirely convinced of the need for discretion. "Will you ride back to the ranch with me after school, or would you prefer I send one of the hands to escort you?" "I can find my own way, thank you," Olivia said with mock severity. "I'm perfectly capable of riding 3 miles without an escort." "I never doubted it." He stood and offered her his hand. "Until this evening, then, Miss Haywood." As the weeks passed, Olivia fell into a comfortable routine. Weekdays were devoted to her students, whom she grew to love despite their occasional wildness. Evenings and weekends were spent at the Northridge Ranch, where she gradually moved from guest to something more like family. Henry courted her with a patience and consideration that touched her deeply. There were no grand gestures or flowery declarations, just a steady, growing affection expressed in 1,000 small ways. A book he thought she might enjoy, wildflowers picked during his rounds of the ranch, his attentive presence each evening as she told him about her day. In early June, Henry announced that he needed to make a trip to Cheyenne on business. "I'll be gone for at least a week," he told Olivia as they walked together in the garden after supper. "Will you be all right staying here alone?" "I won't be alone," Olivia pointed out. "Martha and the hands will be here, but I've been thinking it might be time for me to move into town." She had been considering this for some time, aware that her continued presence at the ranch was causing talk, despite the propriety of their living arrangements. Henry frowned. "Is that what you want?" "It's what's proper," Olivia said carefully. "I've been your guest for nearly 2 months now. And if I said I never wanted you to leave—" Henry stopped walking and turned to face her. In the golden evening light, his eyes were intense, searching her face. Olivia's heart beat faster. "Henry, I love you, Olivia," he said simply. I think I've loved you since that first night when you looked up at me with such courage despite everything you'd suffered." She felt tears gather in her eyes. "I love you too," she whispered, "but I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of making another mistake, of trusting the wrong person again." Henry took her hands in his. "I'm not him, Olivia. I would never betray you as he did." "I know that," she said, and she did. In the time she had known Henry, he had shown himself to be a man of integrity in every way. "But it doesn't make the fear go away. Then we'll face it together." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I was going to wait until after my trip to Cheyenne, do this properly, but—" He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. "Olivia Haywood, will you marry me?" Olivia stared at the ring, then at Henry's face so dear to her now, so full of hope and love. All the doubts that had plagued her seemed to fade away in that moment, leaving only certainty. "Yes," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "Yes, I will marry you, Henry Northridge." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her for the first time, a gentle, reverent kiss that quickly deepened as Olivia responded with a passion that surprised them both. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Henry rested his forehead against hers. "I'll speak to Reverend Wilson before I leave for Cheyenne. We can be married as soon as I return if that's what you want." "I do want that," Olivia said, realizing as she spoke that it was true. She had no desire for a long engagement or an elaborate wedding. What she wanted was to begin their life together. "But what about my teaching position?" "The school term ends in 2 weeks," Henry reminded her. "We can be married after that, and you can decide whether you want to continue teaching in the fall." Olivia nodded, thinking of her students. She had come to love teaching in Opal, but the prospect of being Henry's wife, of helping him run the ranch and perhaps someday raising children of their own, filled her with a joy she had never anticipated. "I love you," she said again, savoring the freedom to say the words aloud. Henry's answer was another kiss, this one promising a lifetime of happiness to come. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Opal. To Olivia's relief, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Her students were especially excited, peppering her with questions about the wedding and whether they would get a new teacher in the fall. "Will you still be Miss Haywood, or will you be Mrs. Northridge?" asked Jenny, the same little girl who had inquired about Jed Reeves on the first day of school. "I'll be Mrs. Northridge," Olivia explained patiently, "but if I continue teaching, you may still call me Miss Haywood in the classroom." "I hope you keep teaching," Jenny said earnestly. "You're the best teacher we've ever had." The morning Henry was due to leave for Cheyenne, he came to the schoolhouse to say goodbye. The children watched with undisguised interest as he kissed Olivia's cheek and promised to return as quickly as his business allowed. "Be careful," Olivia said, a sudden anxiety gripping her. The road to Cheyenne could be dangerous, with the threat of bandits or accidents never far away. "Always." He smiled reassuringly. "I'll be back before you have time to miss me." But as she watched him ride away, Olivia couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. That night, alone in her room at the ranch, she found it difficult to sleep, troubled by vague dreams in which Henry called for her but remained just out of reach. The first 3 days of his absence passed uneventfully. On the 4th day, a violent storm swept through the area, bringing torrential rain and wind that rattled the windows of the schoolhouse. Olivia dismissed her students early, worried about their journey home in the worsening weather. As she rode back to the ranch, the rain soaking through her coat despite her oilskin, she couldn't help thinking of Henry, hoping he had found shelter somewhere along the road. Martha met her at the door with a worried expression. "Mr. Henry should have been in Cheyenne by now," she said, taking Olivia's wet coat. "I hope he thought to wait out this weather." "I'm sure he did," Olivia said, more to reassure herself than Martha. "He knows these storms can be dangerous." But as the days passed with no word from Henry, Olivia's concern grew. By the time a week had elapsed since his departure, the minimum time he had said he would be gone, she was finding it hard to concentrate on her teaching duties. On the 10th day, Sheriff Potter rode out to the ranch. Olivia saw him from the window of the sitting room where she was grading papers. She hurried to the door, her heart in her throat. "Sheriff," she greeted him, searching his face for signs of bad news. "Is there word of Henry?" Potter removed his hat. "May I come in, Miss Haywood?" "I think you should sit down." Cold fear washed over Olivia as she led him to the sitting room. "Please, just tell me," she said when they were seated. "Has something happened to him?" "There was an incident on the road to Cheyenne," Potter said gravely. "A stagecoach was attacked by bandits 5 days ago. 3 passengers were killed." Olivia felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her. "And Henry? Was he?" "Mr. Northridge wasn't on the stage," Potter said quickly, "but he came upon the aftermath. According to the driver, who survived, Mr. Northridge fought off the bandits who were still at the scene and then went after the ones who had fled with the strongbox." "Alone?" Olivia whispered, horrified. Potter nodded grimly. "The driver was badly wounded and couldn't help. Mr. Northridge told him he'd return for him once he dealt with the bandits, but—" The sheriff hesitated. "He never came back," Olivia finished for him. "No, madam. The driver was found by another traveler the next day and brought to Cheyenne. He reported what had happened, and a search party was organized, but they found no sign of Mr. Northridge or the bandits." Olivia pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to contain the sob that threatened to escape. "So he could still be alive," she said, clinging to that slim hope. "He could be hurt somewhere, or—" "It's possible," Potter agreed, though his tone suggested he thought it unlikely. "The search is continuing. I've sent telegrams to all the surrounding towns, and there are men combing the area where the attack took place." After the sheriff left, promising to bring any news immediately, Olivia sat motionless in the sitting room as darkness fell. Martha came in with a lamp and tried to persuade her to eat something, but food was the furthest thing from Olivia's mind. "He's alive," she told Martha fiercely. "I would know if he wasn't. I would feel it." Martha patted her shoulder. "Of course he is, dear. Mr. Henry is too stubborn to die so easily." That night, alone in her room, Olivia clutched Henry's pillow to her chest and prayed as she had never prayed before. She had lost so much in her life, her parents to illness when she was 16, her reputation to lies and scandal in Boston. She couldn't lose Henry too, not when they had only just found each other. The next morning, she made a decision. School was nearly finished for the term, and her students would understand. She had to go to Cheyenne, had to join the search for Henry herself. When she announced her intention to Martha, the housekeeper protested vehemently. "It's too dangerous, Miss Olivia. The same men who attacked the stage and maybe took Mr. Henry could still be out there." "I can't sit here and do nothing," Olivia said, already packing a small bag with essentials. "I'll take one of the hands with me for protection." But her plans were interrupted by the sound of hoofbeats in the yard. Rushing to the window, Olivia saw a rider approaching a man slumped over his horse's neck, his clothes torn and dirty. "Martha," she cried, already running for the door. "Martha, it's Henry." She reached the yard just as Henry's horse came to a stop. He looked up at her with exhausted eyes, his face bruised and cut, a makeshift bandage wrapped around his upper arm dark with dried blood. "Olivia," he whispered, and then he was falling from the saddle. Olivia caught him as best she could, staggering under his weight until 2 ranch hands rushed to help. Together, They carried Henry into the house and laid him on the sofa in the sitting room. "Send for the doctor," Olivia ordered, kneeling beside Henry and taking his hand. It was cold, the fingers scraped raw. "Henry, can you hear me? What happened?" His eyes fluttered open. "Bandits," he said hoarsely. "Followed them. Got the strongbox back, but they jumped me, left me for dead in a ravine. How did you get away?" Olivia asked, tears streaming down her face as she gently stroked his matted hair away from his forehead. A ghost of a smile touched his cracked lips. "Wasn't properly tied. Waited till dark, then walked until I found a homestead. Borrowed a horse." His hand tightened on hers. "Had to get back to you." "I thought I'd lost you," Olivia whispered, bending to kiss his bruised cheek. "Never," Henry murmured. "Promised I'd come back." Dr. Jensen arrived 30 minutes later and shooed Olivia out of the room while he examined Henry. The wait was agonizing, but when the doctor finally emerged, his expression was reassuring. "He's dehydrated and exhausted, with a bullet graze on his arm that's infected but not dangerously so," Jensen reported. "With proper care and rest, he should recover fully." "Thank God," Olivia breathed. "He's asking for you," Jensen added with a small smile. "Don't tire him too much." Henry was propped up on pillows when Olivia returned to the sitting room, his arm properly bandaged, his face cleaned of dirt and blood. He still looked terrible, but the alert look in his eyes was the most beautiful thing Olivia had ever seen. "The doctor says you'll be fine," she said, sitting carefully on the edge of the sofa and taking his hand again. "I had excellent motivation to survive," Henry said, his voice stronger now. "I wasn't about to leave my future wife a widow before we even married." Olivia laughed through her tears. "I was coming to look for you," she admitted. "I was packing when you arrived." Henry's expression sobered. "You would have put yourself in danger for me, of course." She squeezed his hand. "I love you." He pulled her gently closer until her head rested on his chest, where she could hear the steady beat of his heart. "I love you too," he murmured into her hair. "More than I can say." Henry's recovery was slower than either of them would have liked. The infection in his arm proved stubborn, and Dr. Jensen ordered complete bed rest for at least a week. Olivia divided her time between the schoolhouse, where the term was drawing to a close, and Henry's bedside, where she read to him, played chess with him, or simply sat holding his hand while he slept. The bandits who had attacked the stagecoach were eventually captured near Laramie, the strongbox recovered from where Henry had hidden it before being ambushed. Sheriff Potter brought the news himself, along with a letter of commendation from the governor for Henry's bravery. "You're a hero, Mr. Northridge," Potter said, handing over the official-looking document. "Though next time, maybe wait for the law before chasing after armed bandits." Henry, sitting up in bed with Olivia beside him, had the grace to look sheepish. "I've learned my lesson, Sheriff. Some risks aren't worth taking." After Potter left, Olivia fixed Henry with a stern look. "Do you mean that, about not taking unnecessary risks?" "I do," he said soberly. "When I was lying in that ravine, thinking I might die there, all I could think about was you, that I might never see you again, never get to marry you, never have the chance to build a life with you." He took her hand. "I won't put you through that again if I can help it." Olivia leaned forward and kissed him softly. "See that you don't," she murmured against his lips. "I have plans for our future that require you to be alive and well." "Oh." Henry raised an eyebrow, a glint of humor in his eyes. "What sort of plans?" "The sort that involve a long and happy life together," Olivia said, blushing slightly at his teasing tone. "With children and grandchildren and growing old side by side." "That sounds perfect," Henry said, pulling her closer for another kiss. By the time the school term ended, Henry was well enough to attend the closing ceremonies. He sat proudly in the back of the schoolroom as Olivia presented certificates to her students and accepted their heartfelt thanks and small gifts, handkerchiefs embroidered by the girls, a carved wooden box from one of the older boys, wildflower bouquets from the youngest children. "Will you be our teacher again next year, Miss Haywood?" Jenny asked as the children prepared to leave for the summer. Olivia glanced at Henry, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes," she said, smiling at the little girl's delighted expression. "But I'll be Mrs. Northridge by then." Later, as they rode back to the ranch together, Henry asked, "Are you sure about continuing to teach? It's not necessary. The ranch provides more than enough." "I know it's not necessary," Olivia said. "But I love teaching, and I think I can be both a good wife to you and a good teacher to those children." Henry smiled. "I think you can be anything you set your mind to, Olivia Haywood." Their wedding took place on a perfect July morning, with the mountains rising blue and majestic in the distance and wildflowers blooming across the ranch's meadows. The ceremony was held in the garden behind the house, where Martha had created an arbor of roses and local greenery. Olivia wore a simple ivory dress that Martha had helped her make, with lace at the collar and cuffs that had once adorned Henry's mother's wedding gown. Henry, fully recovered from his ordeal, looked handsome and slightly nervous in a new black suit. The entire town of Opal seemed to have turned out for the occasion. Olivia's students sat in a row near the front, the girls with flowers in their hair, the boys uncomfortable in Sunday clothes but beaming with excitement at being part of their teacher's special day. As Reverend Wilson pronounced them husband and wife, and Henry bent to kiss her with a tenderness that made her heart sing, Olivia thought of how far she had come from that terrifying night in the alley behind the Last Chance Saloon. The journey from victim to survivor to beloved wife had not been easy, but standing here, surrounded by people who had become her community, her family, she knew it had been worth every step. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with dancing and feasting and so many well wishes that Olivia's cheeks ached from smiling. As the last guests departed, Henry took her hand and led her toward the house, their house now, in every sense. "Are you happy, Mrs. Northridge?" he asked, pausing on the porch to look down at her in the soft light spilling from the windows. Olivia stood on tiptoe to kiss him, letting all the love she felt flow through the gesture. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," she whispered against his lips, "and this is only the beginning." Henry swept her into his arms, making her laugh in surprise. "The beginning of forever," he agreed, carrying her across the threshold into their future together. Autumn came to Wyoming in a blaze of gold and crimson. Olivia settled into her dual roles as Henry's wife and Opal's schoolteacher, with a joy that sometimes seemed too great to contain. Their life together was not without challenges: a harsh early snowstorm that threatened part of the herd, occasional friction as they adjusted to sharing space and decisions, the ongoing task of balancing her teaching responsibilities with her duties at the ranch. But through it all, their love for each other only deepened. By Christmas, Olivia had news to share. She waited until they were alone on Christmas Eve, sitting before the fire after a day of celebrations with the ranch hands and a few close friends. "I have a gift for you," she said, handing Henry a small package wrapped in red paper. He opened it carefully to find a tiny pair of knitted booties. For a moment he simply stared at them, uncomprehending. Then his eyes flew to her face, wide with wonder. "Olivia, are you?" She nodded, happy tears gathering in her eyes. "Dr. Jensen confirmed it last week. The baby should arrive in early summer after the school term ends." Henry set the booties carefully aside and pulled her into his arms, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "Our baby. Are you pleased?" Olivia asked, though his reaction left little doubt. Please doesn't begin to cover it. He placed a gentle hand on her still flat stomach. "I never thought I could be this happy, this blessed." As they sat together in the warm glow of the fire, planning and dreaming for their child's future, Olivia thought of all the twists and turns that had brought her to this moment. The heartbreak in Boston that had driven her west. The terrifying attack that had nearly cost her everything. The cowboy who had found her broken and bleeding and said 5 simple words that had changed her life. "You're coming home now." She hadn't known then that home wasn't a place at all. It was this Henry's arms around her, their child growing beneath her heart, a love that had survived danger and distance and doubt to become the foundation of a life richer than she had ever imagined possible. "What are you thinking?" Henry asked softly, noticing her pensive expression. Olivia smiled up at him, the man who had saved her in more ways than one. "I'm thinking that I'm finally, truly home." The following June, as wildflowers once again carpeted the meadows of the Northridge ranch, Olivia gave birth to a healthy son they named William Henry Northridge. With his father's dark hair and his mother's blue eyes, he was the perfect blend of them both. Standing in the nursery doorway, watching as Olivia sang softly to their sleeping infant, Henry was overcome with gratitude for the twists of fate that had brought them together, the very same forces that had once seemed so cruel. "I love you," he whispered when Olivia looked up and saw him there. "Both of you, more than words can say." Olivia beckoned him to join them, making room for him on the cushioned rocking chair. As they sat together, their son cradled between them, she knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be, not just home, but heaven on earth. And in the years that followed, through the birth of 2 more children, through droughts and blizzards, through triumphs and sorrows, through all the ordinary days that made up an extraordinary life, that certainty never wavered. The cowboy and the schoolteacher, brought together by violence but bound by love, had found in each other the peace, the purpose, and the passion that made a life well lived. It was, as Henry had said on their wedding night, just the beginning of forever. And what a glorious forever it would be.